Okay, my name's Rebecca Tanner. I'm a naturopath, an acupuncturist, and a midwife, and I've specialised in fertility and pregnancy care for the last 20 years. I'm not sure if you attended my previous seminar or webinar on excellent eggs, but this is kind of like the sister seminar, and this is the foundations that I want all my clients to hear. I've been presenting a seminar like this for many, many years, and I've just recently updated it a little bit. So I will be ad-libbing, and we will be looking at, the content in the slide, of course, as well. So what is the beginning? The beginning is when, of course, Romeo meets Juliet here. And this is, well, I guess it's the beginning as we call it, but it is actually about 3 months prior to this moment that we really want to optimize the health of the egg and the sperm. So what does preconception care involve? So this is the main way that we are able to optimize that egg and sperm by taking that 3 months prior to conception and doing various things. So what we need to make sure in terms of having the right conditions is the presence of all factors required for fertility and the creation of a healthy fetus. So we need to make sure we have all the factors that are needed. And we need to make sure there's an absence of things that could be detrimental to fertility and the formation of a healthy fetus. And we need to aim for optimal general and reproductive health for both partners, because fertility is not an island, and the health of egg and sperm really relates to general health. And we need to optimize the egg and sperm and the nurturing environment of the uterus. The critical 4 months, really for the egg, it's about 120 days, which is really about, 4 months. But actually, there's many opportunities along the way to have, for vulnerability in terms of exposure to toxicity, because the eggs are really starting to interface with the blood flow and the local environment. So any toxicity, any lack of nutrients, any conditions, poor hormonal conditions, they can all influence this evolving the evolving follicles, the growing follicles. So we really want to make sure we have ideal conditions during this 120 days. Now, for the sperm, it takes about 70 to 80 days for the sperm to grow from pretty much from scratch to actually be a fully mature sperm. And this is quite dependent on the hormonal system, the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, but also all those conditions that are locally there in the testes are going to impact on sperm. So general health, testicular health, and that hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis play a big role in sperm development. And it takes over 2 months. So any illness or toxicity or trauma or poor nutrition can really affect sperm at this stage or any stage. So why is it so important that we upgrade our fertility and we look at fertility support? Well, you can see from this graph that actually the fertility rates in Australia are going down. And so we are having a situation where 1 in 6 couples in Australia and New Zealand are infertile. Perhaps that's not a great word, let's say subfertile. Couples over 35, which is the majority of people that I see, the chance of conception in any given month is said to be about 10 to 15%. and over 40, the odds drop to 5%. But it's almost a bit like an algorithm. So if you've got multiple issues, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, combined with age, et cetera, then or male factor fertility, then it's just going to make it more and more difficult to conceive. So that's where our preconception healthcare is really, really important. And only about 36.5% of individuals or couples undergoing artificial reproductive technologies like IVF in 2019 came home with a baby. So really, we can see we need to improve those odds. And there are many, many factors which are going against those odds. And you can see from this graph, many of them are environmental, some of them are medical, the human microbiome and our lifestyles are playing a huge role in adversely affecting fertility in this day and age. So what are the benefits of preconception healthcare? Well, better natural fertility and IVF outcomes, better quality ova and sperm, healthy pregnancy, birth and postpartum, and the child's health potential is likely to be very much improved. So there's so many reasons to take the time to invest in preconception healthcare and in your health in general in your reproductive years. So what it involves, and this is based on back in the 90s, there was a study that was done which utilized preconception healthcare. And these were the things that they introduced, and they got phenomenal results, almost doubling the fertility and IVF success rates. So the aim was to reduce all potential harmful toxins and add in essential nutrients. And those things included optimizing nutrition, having a water filtration system, avoiding toxins, the usual ones, avoiding chemicals, all those creams and things that contain phthalates and parabens on the skin. So using natural cosmetics, avoiding toxic hair dyes and household chemicals, cleaners, plastics, microwaves, etc. Reducing or minimizing electromagnetic pollution, so taking stuff out of the room, especially at night time where you're sleeping for 8 hours, that could be having effect, like the mobile phone, turning that on airplane mode if you've got to have it in your room. Also managing sleep and stress, having a fertility medical checkup, as well as looking at nutrient status. And I've just included gene testing because that was not included back in those days. Making sure the tubes are clear, having a look at the uterus morphology, and microbiome check, another new test that's been added, looking at genitourinary infections and understanding your fertility through natural fertility awareness, so your body signs. So going back to that figure, 1 in 6 couples in Australia are unable to conceive. That was a 2021 statistic. But it takes 2 to tango, and we know this. So it's estimated that 20% of fertility issues are male factor only, 30% are combined, and 50%. So 50% in total are linked to males. So they are really not off the hook. It really takes 2 to tango, and we want that 3 months, even 4 months prior to conception to optimize fertility. So we're going to talk a little bit about sperm because there has been, unfortunately, because they are the smallest cell in the body, there's been a lot of decline in the average sperm counts over the last 50 years and in the quality. So the things that typically reduce male fertility, the common suspects, we've sort of just touched on: environmental toxicity, obesity, high cholesterol, blood pressure and heart disease, diabetes, poor stress and sleep, medications, local injury, surgery, varicocele infections, low testosterone, effects of prolactin, alcohol and drugs, smoking and diseases. So the sperm being the smallest cell in the body, that men are producing about 1,000 per second, they're very, very vulnerable. highly vulnerable. So in fact, they do provide one of the most sensitive biological markers for male health. Sperm DNA damage counts, and sometimes you need to convince your reproductive specialist to include a DNA fragmentation on a regular semen analysis. And I'd just like to convince you that it's very worthwhile, because DNA damage in sperm is a major factor in the failure of couples trying to conceive. And evidence links oxidative stress to male infertility, and sperm DNA damage is caused by oxidative stress and is associated with recurrent miscarriages as well as lower fertility. A 2024 report showed that sperm DNA fragmentation index affected fertility and pregnancy outcomes and offspring safety. And actually, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine now recommends it as it's been recognized and recommended as a test for couples trying to conceive, particularly if they've had 12 months of not being able to conceive. But why would you wait? If you are an older couple, you don't have a huge window for fertility. So it's better to be preemptive, and sperm are very, very responsive to treatment. If we can work out what's causing the damage, we can improve sperm so easily in 3 months. So, as I said, the chromosome damage, it increases with aging, but it affects pretty much all aspects of fertility. The ability to conceive, it increases miscarriage risk, and it can also affect offspring if there's high DNA fragmentation. So things like poor nutrition, age, oxidative stress from alcohol and smoking, increased weight, occupational hazards, pretty much anything can be toxic to those tiny little sperm who are so vulnerable. And there's not lots of nutritional deficiencies found in men. So in 3,000 men who went through Fertility First, there were about 59% of them that had some sort of nutritional deficiency. And many of those nutrients are involved in combating oxidative stress. So that's when, the sperm get damaged by reactive molecules, just like when you leave an apple out and you've had a bite in it and goes brown because of oxidative stress. Well, sperm get affected by oxidative stress as well. So they need this protective shield that's provided by a lot of nutrients. And if any of those nutrients are missing, it could mean that the sperm don't have as good a protective shield. So these are some of the antioxidants that I like to use and that have been written up in the literature. So this was a systematic review of antioxidant types in male fertility that has good research and evidence base behind it. And many of these I'll talk about in a male fertility seminar coming up. And I talked about a lot of these nutrients in my Excellent Eggs webinar that I did a few days ago and will be available on my website, Rebecca Tanner Natural Health, in a few weeks' time. The most important health check for males is really a semen analysis, and that should include sperm antibodies and a DNA fragmentation test. It's a non-invasive test. Imagine if women could have a completely non-invasive tests for their fertility and a complete fertility report card. It's just not available for women. It is also, as I said, the quintessential biomarker for health, and also it really does reflect disease and mortality risk. So I would encourage all males to have a semen analysis and include that DNA fragmentation test. And these are not expensive tests. You may be out of pocket, say up to $200, $300, but that is a beautiful report card and a window into a male's health and fertility that is just invaluable. So where do we start? Common factors affecting female fertility. So we're going to focus on the female now, because if we've got that beautiful report card for men, that's what we need, and then we can work backwards. For females, it's a bit more complicated. So there's a lot of the same factors that are affecting female fertility, and age being the top of the list, and toxicity and stress and poor sleep. Also, the history of contraceptive use and infectious history and reproductive conditions, inflammatory load. So many things can affect female fertility. So although we're designed to be fertile, it's amazing how modern day living is really sort of competing against us being fertile. So if we can reduce many of these factors, we can actually let that beautiful fecundity surface again. So for confident conception, we want to have medical and functional testing. This is, we want to detox and de-stress. We need to address nutritional, diet, and lifestyle factors, and we need to understand our fertile body signs. So female medical investigations include blood tests, having a hycosi, which is basically an ultrasound followed by a saline flush that looks to make sure that the tubes are cleared, and an ultrasound gives an idea on the uterine morphology. So combined with that, having an infection screen, and there may be other tests that are required. So often there's a lot required in a female fertility workup. So this is for females who haven't conceived after 12 months, or if you're over 35, after 6 months. Definitely these investigations are worth pursuing. So for women, preemptively, I would always want to have these basic tests covered off, and iron studies, vitamin D, looking at some of the genetic testing, thyroid function, full blood count, serum folate and red blood cell. Must be a cycle day 2 or 3 hormone panel, and a mid-luteal estrogen and progesterone, which gives great information on, just that hormonal balance at that crucial implantation phase. Sometimes it's worth doing a celiac antibody test or a celiac gene test, that will depend, and then a metabolic profile. So a lot of this testing is just so beneficial for general health and well-being, but on a fertility journey, it's really crucial. Are gene tests worth it? I personally find some basic gene testing really helpful. Looking at the MTHFR gene, for example, some of the other genes that you will find. There's a gene test that I use, no longer 23andMe, sadly, because that's a bit doesn't cover what it used to. So sorry, that's an old slide. But you can do some gene testing that gives you information on your celiac risk, B12, choline, vitamin D, folic acid. There's, your antioxidant status, the way you metabolize your neurotransmitters. So there's some information that can be very helpful. It's not essential, but there is definitely some information that can be very helpful from some basic gene testing. Now, we always need to start with a general cleanup, and so that's because there is just so much in our environment. And the great thing is that clearing out things from your cupboard, like moisturizers and cosmetics that have got a lot of chemicals in them, a lot of things like a lot of the chemicals in those products actually can be excreted within a week or 2 of stopping the topical use. So you can definitely benefit from clearing out your cupboards and using things that, are like foods on your skin. So the skin can soak it up, and you can get benefit instead of enhancing your toxic load and having a whole pile of xenoestrogens adversely affecting your fertility. This is just to show that heavy metals, so you'll see over here, this person who I saw way back in 2006 had extremely high cadmium and lead, and it was really affecting this fertility case. I don't do as many hair analysis tests as I used to, because I actually can find out a lot of the information by their occupational exposure, and also the number of fillings that they have, and just the products that they use. So sometimes I will do a gene test over a hair analysis test. These are the ideal preconception heavy metal levels from the Foresight website, and really they should be very, very low, and often those heavy metals are a little bit higher than what I would like, and can adversely affect egg and sperm health if they are really, if a person has accumulated a high amount of these toxic elements. And so the BPAs that I was mentioning that are often in cosmetics, as well as phthalates, can really affect implantation. And those women undergoing IVF who had the top amount of BPAs in their urine were 211 times more likely to have implantation failure. So, it's not something to ignore. And those blood levels of heavy metals are also really concerning. So it's really time to reevaluate that exposure in our environment. Is there a outgassing happening in a new home? Should we be ventilating more, opening more windows? Same in a new car, and getting rid of all the products that contain long lists of chemicals that we can't even pronounce. So this is just a look at some of the xenoestrogens and environmental toxins that are common in our lives. And another thing we should really think about is having mobile phones in our pockets, and even spending long periods on a mobile phone may have an impact on the brain, which can then affect the testes. So just being sensible, I think, not carrying that mobile phone for men in their front pocket turned on. So trying to eliminate and avoid all those things that I've just talked about is really key. So we all know the effects of stress are not good for any aspect of health and well-being. We can't get rid of all stress, so it's kind of how we manage it, and doing a little bit of an unwind every day so that the brain gets some signaling that we are not constantly running from a tiger, but we are having some downtime. So we know that chronic stress affects IVF outcomes, and cortisol inhibits estrogen production in follicle cells, leading to reduced quality and number of retrieved oocytes. I find acupuncture, which I do a lot of, is really helpful for getting women's cortisol down, and acupuncture just before an IVF can be so helpful, and letting women get their stress hormones managed. So unwinding the clock every day is super important. So whatever that might be, whatever it might look like, some mindfulness for 20 minutes, starting with 5, putting your legs up the wall, some breathing techniques, some walking in nature, some grounding, whatever it is for you. But it needs to be a daily unwind. Also, exercise can really improve IVF outcomes, but not too much. So it's a balance. So exercise for a minimum of 1 hour 3 times a week improved ICSI and IVF implantation rates and had a reduced risk for miscarriage. But for women who overexercise, it can have the reverse effect. So that more than an hour of intense exercise a day was really associated with lower fertility rates. So we want to be moving, we want to be active, and we want to do sensible amounts of exercise. And what's right for one woman might be different for someone else. So that's going to depend on your fitness and, nourishment and a whole bunch of factors. We need to build up with good food. So cleaning out the pantry and eating whole foods, eating the sorts of things that aren't in packets that we actually need to prepare. Hopefully, if we are able to get some organic or grass-fed meats in particular, that would be amazing. But we do our best to upgrade our diet and add whole foods, and, wash vegetables if we are unable to get organic. and especially some of the vegetables on the, that have got higher exposure to pesticides. Really crucial to avoid, especially refined sugar and flour and preservatives and additives and too much caffeine and alcohol, and definitely all those terrible trans fats from things like margarine and unstable oils. And soft drinks are an absolute killer when it comes to sugar dose, and including those with the fake sugars that adversely affect microbiomes. Avoid all genetically modified foods as well. So this is the dirty dozen. So these are the ones that we particularly want to wash before we eat or get organic. And on the other side, we've got the clean 15, which tend to have a little bit less pesticide exposure. We know that the Mediterranean diet improves IVF success rate. So women who adhered to the Mediterranean diet very, very well had a 48.8% live birth rate, which is pretty amazing compared to those that didn't adhere well to the diet. And that was almost like half the live birth rate. So what you eat and your lifestyle, it really, really matters for success with IVF in particular in this study. And another study from the Journal of Human Reproduction found that women with better diets are 65% more likely to be successful with IVF. And having organic foods does seem to have better antioxidant capacity than non-organic foods. It's really key that women get the right amount of nutrients, especially those women that are trying to conceive over their fertile peak, which I would consider to be, anywhere from 33, 35 onwards. In order to be fertile, we need to have good iron levels. We have a saying in Chinese medicine, you need to be blood rich in order to be fertile. And so having your ferritin over 40 is really important, and that is more predictive of better IVF pregnancy rates. And also vitamin D status has been linked to better implantation and live birth rates. So we want to see it at good levels. For understanding your fertile body signs really helps you to identify that fertile window. And one of the best things to try and look for is that beautiful cervical mucus, that stretchy egg white mucus, and also that rise in temperature that comes with beautiful amounts of progesterone, because progesterone, it comes in the second half of the cycle, turns us into that incubator for that perfect environment for that embryo to implant. So making sure that you've got a good fertile menstrual report card, so a steady red blood flow, preferably clot-free, going for about 3 to 5 days, healthy cervical mucus pattern, having that biphasic temperature graph so that you've got those slightly higher temperatures in the progesterone phase, ovulating somewhere between day 11 and 17, and minimal pain and PMT, and a cycle length that's not too short or too long. And this is just a picture showing the fertile mucus. So you can see that lovely stretchy fertile mucus, which heralds that we are having good levels of estrogen and we are going to be ovulating soon. Typically, anyway, if you have got PCOS, sometimes you get the now you see it, now you don't slippery mucus. But if you've got that slippery mucus, it's a great time to go for gold, because sperm can survive very well in that mucus. This is just an example of a temperature chart where a client of mine who'd been trying to conceive for many, many years, did end up conceiving after she had that beautiful temperature shift, which you can see there, and very happily found out that she was pregnant. And often these charts are invaluable in being able to check in and see what that progesterone cover is like and exactly when a woman is ovulating without having to go in and having, invasive blood tests. If you don't mind blood tests are fine. Having healthy eggs is crucial to fertility, and the environment surrounding the ovarian follicle is what influences the maturing egg. So eggs are kind of in suspended animation until that 3 to 4 months prior to being selected out for ovulation. And it's the blood flow, which is really key to bringing all those nutrients and oxygen to the tissue. And as we get older, we know that the blood flow is less. So a woman that's 40 has about half the amount of blood flow going to her ovaries. And if you ask anyone who does ultrasounds on ovaries, you'll see that the women who are older have these very small ovaries, which have less follicles, but also a lot less blood flow going to them. And that blood flow helps to plump them up and keep them healthy. Mitochondria are so important. So mitochondrial health, an egg cell contains over 500,000 mitochondria, it's been estimated. So more mitochondria than a heart cell, a phenomenal amount. So anything that affects the mitochondria and its energy production, because of course mitochondria are the energy producing parts of a cell, and the egg cell needs that energy to do all the things it does, aligning the chromosomes for its healthy metabolism, for healthy growth. All of those things rely on the mitochondria, and healthy mitochondria is key. So it's also been found that the cytoplasm of younger donors, which are transferred into older eggs, which contain those young mitochondria, make the egg act like a younger an egg if it's given to an older donor. So super crucial that we address mitochondrial health. Oxidative stress is the other thing we need to address for healthy eggs. So we need to look at the oxidative load, just like in sperm. And you can see the healthy egg there is floating. It's likely to have a lot less oxidative stress from all those environmental toxins, and having good antioxidants in the body from like lots of berries, green leafy vegetables, and some of the nutrients that I recommend and have discussed in my Excellent Eggs webinar. Blood sugar balance is key. So women that have poor blood sugar balance have these things called advanced glycation end products, which are very damaging for eggs. So don't underestimate how keeping the sugar out of your diet and just having a healthy blood sugar curve can really influence fertility. I wanted to briefly talk about traditional Chinese medicine because that is my area of interest. I do practice a lot using, there's about 12 Chinese medicine herbal formulas that I just couldn't live without. And I also do a lot of acupuncture for fertility and IVF and also pregnancy. And I just wanted to mention that acupuncture is amazing for circulation and blood flow and to the reproductive organs. It's also as great, as I said, for facilitating relaxation, and it can really improve IVF outcomes. So a really important thing to recommend for clients undergoing IVF, and that's if they don't mind needles. If they're absolutely petrified of needles, there's always a way around it. I often use acupressure, or I have these little tabs or magnetic stimulators that I can use. And even moxa or heat can be used if people don't like needles, but it really does seem to be beneficial for fertility and IVF outcomes, and also just for getting menstrual cycles more regulated, which is key for fertility success. A huge population that I see is the PCOS women who are not ovulating frequently, and acupuncture can be super, super helpful for that subgroup of women. Again, I've done a webinar on PCOS if anyone's interested. So there was a benchmark study done quite a long time ago. It was in 2002, and it was on the Palace Protocol. And this was the thing that showed for the first time that acupuncture really improved IVF success rates. Now, this is a protocol that I would not recommend now because these were 3-day embryos. And things have changed a bit now. Mostly women have got blastocysts that are transferred now. And so the protocol will be slightly different, but it's just to illustrate the point that this is the benchmark study that showed a great improvement in IVF success. And So it's definitely something that is worth incorporating, but we need to be a little bit more up to date with how we are approaching our IVF fertility clients. And one of the protocols, or it's a sort of protocol, it's like an individualized protocol. So there's about 3 points that are standard that everyone must have. And then on top of that, there's about 3 to 6 points that are added depending on the individualized picture of the person. And so at Kindbody, which is an IVF clinic in Chicago, there's IVF clinics in Chicago, in New York. They use pretty much acupuncture for all clients undergoing IVF that elect for it, but it does improve outcomes. So most clients do tend to elect for acupuncture. And with the protocols that they use that I try and follow, the live birth success rate with frozen embryo transfers was 47.8%. Now, remembering that in America, in these a lot of these IVF clinics, they are using PGD testing. So these would have been with PGD tested embryos, but still it's a really good outcome compared to the controls that just had the frozen embryo transfers alone. And so, yeah, there's some great evidence coming out for acupuncture protocols that we just need to be on top of, like all the research, because it can really make a difference to our clients. So I just wanted to summarize all the things that we've talked about. It takes two, and that is just so key to get men on board. So many times we haven't had that full semen report card that includes a DNA fragmentation test. And if we can improve the health of our males and improve their sperm quality and improve their DNA quality, we've got an algorithm that increases our IVFs and fertility chances. So we must look at men. So even if the sperm is described as good, we want it to be amazing. We want it to be super quality. So we're enhancing a woman's chances, because very often the clock is ticking a little bit louder for women, as we know that women have this sort of narrow reproductive window that really closes by the time they're about 42. And ideally, you want to get onto things before that time. So testing, as I said, the testing is crucial just to make sure we've covered off, especially things like iron, vitamin D, those hormones, to make sure those cycle day 2, 3 hormones have been tested, to make sure that that luteal phase hormone picture is assessed. There's, if it's a polycystic ovarian woman, we want to see what the drivers are, and then we are able to correct that with a combination of herbs, which I love from Chinese medicine and acupuncture and Western medicines. That combination is just fantastic for getting women cycling. But we need the testing information to really target our treatments. We really need a target detoxification as well. So clearing out the cupboards of all those chemicals. So things like cosmetics contain a lot of phthalates and PCBs and things that actually will be removed and eliminated from the system, within a week of stopping slathering those products on your skin. So it can make a big difference to get rid of all those environmental toxins. And we need to build up with all the nutrients that might be missing. We need to get a woman iron rich in order to conceive, but too much iron can be really damaging. So it can have an oxidative effect. So it's kind of like the Goldilocks effect with iron. We want to build a woman's blood, but building blood is not always just about iron. There's other factors that are involved. And I do like things like Floridix and bone broth often, which have got other factors, not just iron. Unwinding. That is just crucial, to have a daily regime so that the brain is getting that safety message. I'm living in a safe environment to conceive. Of course, we can't get rid of all of stress, but we need that balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system so that we can get the correct signaling to the ovaries and uterus. Really checking in with your fertile body signs is just crucial. So, understanding that fertile mucus, having a look at your menstrual blood flow. So, that blood flow should be red and it should have a good flow for 3 to 5 days without clots and pain. And if you've only got a day of blood flow or a little bit of spotting that happens before your period comes, we really need to look at what's underlying that, because either the lining is coming away too early for that spotting prior and not allowing a good opportunity for implantation, or if there's hardly any menstrual flow, that's often reflecting a lining that just doesn't have the depth and breadth we want in order to conceive. We want that good fertile mucus that heralds that ovulation is coming, and that's going to provide that beautiful substance for sperm to sort of live in and feed on, and while it might be waiting for that egg to arrive. So it's crucial to have that beautiful fertile mucus for fertility. And acupuncture, and I have to say some of the Chinese herbs that I use are also really effective in improving fertility. You've got these ancient techniques that are hundreds to 1,000-year old. And so some of these formulas have been used not just for 10 or 20 years, but for several hundreds of years on fertility. So they can be really effective in adding into to a fertility regime, because in traditional China, they're also very interested in longevity and aging. So I think I've covered everything. I know I've gone rather quickly, um, but I think, you've gathered the gist that there's a lot that can be done as in that preconception window and for fertility foundations. And I'm going to open it up to see if you have any questions. And if we don't have any questions, I hope you have a fabulous day and good luck on your fertility journeys. And this is my website if you are interested in anything else, or making any of the other webinars I do, or making an appointment. So let's just see if we've got any questions. You can type it into the chat if there are any. Oops. Looks like we don't have any questions. So have a fabulous day, and thank you so much for joining me. Thank you.